to say that a few years ago, 2 years ago maybe, I got to meet Bill Harris. I think it was up there, and he was putting together his deal with you guys, and I felt like I was meeting an HBO Western, with the hat and the. Is that Bill?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I got to meet his kids. I think his 2 sons. It was like, oh, yeah, how you guys doing up there? But anyway, they all work with him, and I asked them what they thought about going to school, and I think basically they gave thanks that they were graduating from high school because they just wanted to be working on the ground. But I don't know how many of you folks actually go up there or are from Yukon or are Canadians familiar with Yukon, but it's quite a place with a lot of wildcat activity. And just to set the scene, it's a lot like Quebec, in many ways. Big landscapes, a lot of land, and nobody embarrassed about working in minerals, and everyone's very helpful. So there are probably very few jurisdictions like it in the world. And as I said off the top of my head, I just come up with Quebec and Yukon, at least here in North America, and then of course Nevada, which is closer to home. Tim, let me start with you because you are the new kids on the block, and I actually had to go and get the Granite Creek thing to kind of understand. I'm not a geologist, right? I studied. I got to have a couple master's degrees, but they're in English and journalism. So my knowledge of rocks came from throwing rocks when I was growing up in New York City at old windows of burnt-out buildings in the Bronx, and then when I went to get my graduate degree, going to school with people who studied rocks at the University of Arizona. Right, but I wasn't studying geology. So my focus is more finance and money and helping people make money. And I guarantee that most of the people who are sitting down here just want a stock that they can buy so that they can make a little money. Tim, when you talk about battery metals, I mean, and you have this metallic minerals consortium, right? 3 companies.
Yes.
So 3 companies.
3 companies. Yep.
One of them, I've been to one of the properties in. Is it Montana?
That would be Group 10 in Montana.
Yeah, yes. I've seen some of theirs. But when you guys make a decision to go for it, is it like you're all sitting around a table and you say battery metals? Yeah.
Well, in our case, it's copper, which is we can call it an electric metal. Right, as we build more electric cars, you're going to need more copper. But you look at something that you think is going to turn around, right? And when we looked at getting into copper, I mean, the other 2 companies were in silver and in platinum groups. But you look at something that's undervalued. We looked at the land position that was undervalued, and we saw an opportunity because there was an operating mine in the district, so we consider it brownfields, and we knew that there'd been historic work on there in the past. So those are the opportunities that only come around at the bottom of the price cycle, and that's where we felt we were.
Well, God knows copper has been in that field. I've been an investor in Ivanhoe Mines, the African version, since it was a private company in 2003. Okay, so 17 years, and I'll just tell you that's our largest position. We have about $400,000 or $500,000 worth of Ivanhoe Mines, and they have their big copper project in the DRC Congo. But copper has been, and to a certain extent zinc, I guess, right? And even nickel, even though it's doubled in the past 3 or 4 years in price. Copper's been such a slug. I mean, the price is only broken out slightly in the past 3 or 4 weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's about 3 weeks that we broke the downtrend, and it's now appears to be on its way up, or so we're hoping that it's on its way up.
Well, yeah, you have to. I mean, when you see these the copper giants talk about their copper, including Robert at Ivanhoe Mines, they talk about how copper is the lingua franca or the metalla franca of the world, right? It's not gold or platinum or palladium or nickel, maybe iron ore, but it's copper. Okay, copper powers everything. And of course, as you know, there are some theories also that the whole EV boom, and this is a nice transition to Scott because of battery metals also, that copper will benefit the most from the boom in EVs. Not not nickel or zinc or lithium or graphite, but copper, because there are many pounds, 70, 80, 100 pounds of copper in every new EV, something like that. Anyway, I thought,
It's about 10 times what a regular car would
Scott,
have.
that I would ask you a couple questions, but the first one is, again, the battery metals question. I mean, give us kind of like a little perspective on where you see the battery metals going. Some of them have run. Some of these companies have had a nice run. Others are stuck in the mud, including graphite companies and zinc.
Sure. Well, when we originally picked up the project, we pretty much looked across Canada looking for high-grade cobalt. And we scoured a bunch of the jurisdictions. Yukon was obviously one of our favorites. We had just optioned our Wells project off to K2, so we kind of lost our flagship, but we got funding for our next project. So we found this monster project up in Yukon, just north of Dawson. And we actually called our company Go Cobalt at that point because there was such a boom around cobalt. But in reality, it's a giant copper play, or potential copper play. It could be. So how does this relate to metals, or
battery metals?
It's a pretty easy.
EVs.
It's an easy sell. If it just makes sense, seeing people having electric cars in the future. Is that the question?
No, that's a good answer. Scott, you reference Australia and the Olympic
Dam?
Yeah, Olympic Dam, and I've been there. Can't remember anything, but I've been there.
A lot of companies like comparing themselves to Olympic Dam, but that's just an easy one that people can visualize.
But yeah, and I don't know if you all know the trend that's been going on in Australia when it comes to small mining companies and how they compare to mostly Canadian and North American mining companies. But they tend to be faster to market with production. A little like the Yukon, right? Some of these Yukon companies are moving fast toward production, not just Eagle, but Alexco looks like it's moving fast, a few other companies. But have you seen any interest? I know the Australian companies have looked at properties in Alaska and Yukon to invest in, and there have been a few investments for gold and copper, including in that Goodpaster district in Alaska. But have you seen the Australians, who have plenty of cash and know how to operate so that they can keep their shareholders happy without diluting them too much? Have you seen any interest in Australian companies? Like, maybe this is more a question for anyone, not Sandy Silver or Michael. But
we keep in touch with the bigger companies for sure. We keep them abreast of our development, and we bounce ideas off them just to see how they would like us to develop further. So,
yeah, because I see that as I think South 32 is Australian, aren't they? The company that invests in Trilogy at Alaska, Trilogy Metals. But I see Australians showing interest in a project as just added credibility. Who knew that the Australians were going to come up with their cheap Australian currency and their companies that have billions of shares outstanding and do a little rescue act here? Because let's face it, our capital markets in North America, when it comes to these tiny companies, are still broken. Don't get fooled by all this activity. And until something drastic changes, it's going to be a start. Can you tell me real quick, and don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you, Matt, Quebec. We just saw a tremendous discovery, and I happen to be a little early on this. I've owned it for about 6 months, and I followed the company. Azimut Exploration, way up there in James Bay, came out with tremendous values of gold over 7 holes on Monday, and the stock was up 175%. And it's really trading out the kazoo. And it's a Frenchman who lives in Quebec, Jean-Marc Lelin. Just tremendous untapped gold up there, but copper. You said you have a nickel property in Quebec. Where is HSP?
Well, it's just north of Havre Saint Pierre. So that's where we got. It wasn't a very creative name, but it's about 100 kilometers north of Havre Saint Pierre, which is just on the other side of the Gaspé Peninsula, basically east coast.
So it's eastern Quebec.
Yeah.
Right.
It's about 300 kilometers south of Voisey's Bay. So that's our model. But
Right. Well, yeah, for sure. And what made you pick Quebec? Was it just a fortunate timing? Was there land there? Was there a deal?
At the time, we had another project in Quebec. We really liked the mining incentives. We find it just like the Yukon. It's another great mining jurisdiction. So we intentionally went around looking there for a nickel project. And we knew that Labrador had some good experience with nickel projects, with Voisey's Bay, obviously. And so we combed through a bunch of mag data, and we found something pretty interesting. And so we went in there this past summer, and we blanketed it with a lot more mag, and we're ready to hit the ground now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go over to Matt, but first I'm going to grab an M80 from my bag and throw it over there so that I can explode those speakers. No, just kidding. You know what an M80 is. Matt, okay, so I've known you for a few years now, and thank you for subscribing.
My pleasure.
Yes, and by the way, you're different, right? You have money in the bank, right?
Yeah, we didn't for a long time though, so it's, you know what I mean? It's
Sure. Does Yukon have a flow-through like Quebec has?
no.
No. So is Quebec the only province that has flow-through?
Well, sorry, Yukon does have flow through,
But not as generous.
Super.
Not as generous as Quebec. Do companies tend to do flow-through?
We do. Yeah, we did for our 4 million. Well, yeah, the 4.5 million that we brought in. I'd say probably 3.3 of it was flow through dollars.
And do you ever have to, dispute what you're spending the money on? Once in a while that does happen in Quebec.
Yeah, it's pretty clear cut for us. It's either, so much of our dollars that we spend are flow through eligible. They're for exploration. It's your corporate overheads, marketing, things like that. That's not flow through eligible. Yeah. But
well, look, Matt, you're in my little box, and you have been for about a year now on companies that I'm, almost ready to buy, and I'm on the record on this. It's all public. I write about it. People pay me. I don't know why. And
I pay you.
That's right. You pay me. What are we at? $159 a year now? I forget. I have to ask my daughter.
It's the best $159 I've spent all year, Tom. There you go.
Thank you. No, I've been doing this for.
Can we make that flow through eligible?
Thank you. Oh, good, because I can document. I think we both can. In a broad sense, what I like about Rockhaven is, one, no royalties, right?
Yeah.
So if there's ever going to be a deal for the whole company, that's going to that won't scotch the mix. Number two, it's it's got roads. You're surrounded by placer miners, real placer miners, right? Not like vacationing Manitobans.
No, these are real placer miners.
These are real placer miners who drink real sourdough cocktails, sourdough, not sourdough cocktails. And you're 3 hours from Whitehorse. That's reasonable. Do you think that you have to be a company like an Alexco or a Golden Predator or a Victoria that is trying to go, or actually is on a fast track to production? To impress people?
It sure feels like it to get love in the market.
To get attention,
Yeah, it sure feels like it now. We're hoping that our continued focus on exploration will pay larger dividends with success. We're hoping anyway, right? If you make a major new discovery, people will look at it and say, "Oh, hold on, these guys already have they have this new discovery plus another 1.6 million ounces on the books." And then
I know you're part of that strategic minerals group, right?
Strategic metals group, yeah.
Strategic metals, yes. And I met that cat.
Or strategic exploration group, I guess.
That's right.
I should know the name.
Do you ever have people from China or Japan or Korea or elsewhere come over and look at taking a 0.5% or a 1% stake for reasons of of shipping product to their smelters years out? Because I know there are funds like this that specialize, and some of them are actually based in Vancouver. You know, you take a 0.5% or a 1% stake. I know there are a couple of those types of investors in Victoria, but they've been in it for a long time. Do you ever have people?
I was just talking to a group about half an hour ago.
Right. And so explain that a little. Like, how does that work? They come over and they're like, you know, they introduce you, you know.
Well, yeah, like the fact that we're relatively close to deep water ports, that would go straight across the ocean, right?
And they need product?
They need product, yes.
For their manufacturers?
Yes.
So it's like a more commercial type of jog mech, or a more commercial type of, what's the Korean one called? The entity?
Yeah, for their smelters, basically.
Yeah. Right. So it's people wanting to actually lock you in, hopefully.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Or at least start some goodwill.
Yeah. I think it's kind of all the full spectrum, right? There's even some groups that are taking joint ventures in projects to be able to get that concentrate down the road. Yeah. Right? We saw that.
And Matt, one more question. How, you know, so maybe you have to raise another $1 million or $2 million here. That's not a lot, because your market cap, you said, was $25 million?
About that, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, do you tend to do non-brokereds?
Yeah, that's kind of the main.
Yeah, non-brokered means you don't have to, you know, pay the devil a lot of money, just a little sometimes. How hard is it to raise $1 million right now?
Good question.
Easier now than it was
way
a year and a half ago?
Especially flow-through dollars, way easier. But again, you need to have enough hard dollars in the bank to cover all your, you know, keeping the company itself going, right? So
that's why it's easier to raise money if you have money? Is that why you said that?
Yeah, I think just in general, it's easier to raise money if you have money. But to raise $1 million in flow-through, say right now, it's actually, well, there's really not much in the way of flow-through dollars available just because it's January. But coming, even it sounds like into the later part of February, there's going to be a fair amount of flow-through dollars, knock on wood.
That'll be interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because those flow-throughs tend to happen toward the end of the year, right? Because of charitable
There's
giving.
already groups reaching out to me right now about...
I'm in that camp, by the way. In order to keep everyone happy at home, I have to have money, you know? Yeah. Otherwise, no one's happy with me, right? Zero. I'm going to have more money today after that 49ers-Packers game. Laugh now.
Well, I can say, Tom, as a subscriber, I really value the commentary that you have.
That's nice of you to say. I'm fortunate that I got lucky.
I'm sure I'll be getting a 20% discount.
Always. I'm fortunate I got lucky with a company, and we sold it for $512 million in 2004, Market Watch. And for me, it was hard work and luck.
Yeah.
And that was 2004. That was 15 years ago. Oh, my God. Okay, so I thought maybe I would open it up a little. I mean, are there people who are going to want to ask these cats questions? I have no idea what time it is. Or if there aren't going to be any questions, I would love to know if you, Scott, or you, Tim, have anything specific, whether it's about the geology or the finances. So first, let me ask, are there any questions out there for these guys? Questions about how their stock could make you money? Anything? No. Okay. Let's go to Scott. Scott, is there, I don't know, if you're going to, I'm Mr. Moneyman, so I stick with the money theme. And I have to explain this every day if I write for our folks, our audience. What's the event that could send the stock even 20% higher? Just what could be? I mean, without violating any BCSC regulatory rules.
Well, we're coming up to drill season, so drill results are obviously something that can move the stock quite a bit. But I guess that won't be until the summer. It's pretty speculatory. What could move the stock? Doing a deal with a bigger group, someone that's interested, that could obviously move the stock. It's a funny time in the season because maybe even doing a financing could move the stock. But that's That's partly why we were interested in Quebec as well, because the Yukon, although it's a great mining jurisdiction, it's kind of limited in our season. So most of the time we spend on our flagship it's about 2.5 months in the summertime. So it's kind of hard to generate results throughout the year. So that was a big reason for going to Quebec. Quebec, you can drill during the winter. You can kind of move it all through the year, which we're actually not doing it right now because we haven't got to that stage. But that was the reason for doing that. So I'm not sure.
Yeah,
that's kind of
good.
A roundabout.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if a strategic investor came in, that would be big. Tim, once again, what's the driver here that ordinary folks could understand? Because as we know, it's actually the ordinary folks in the market that drive the actual numerical price of the stock. It's not the institutional investors. It's always the 100 share, 1,000 share, 5,000 share trades that do it.
I think a couple of the big major drivers for us is we're just starting to get the story out. So as the people get to know about us, combined with a significant move in metal prices would be a big catalyst for us. If we can see $3 copper, and as our story gets out and people start to realize the value of what we have, I think that's going to be a major mover. As we finance and move into drilling for this summer, that, once the market starts to know, yes, we actually are going to drill, that could be a major mover. And for us, any other news in the Minto Copper Belt is going to help all the players in the Minto Copper Belt move up. So we look forward to the other companies around us making announcements as well.
Well, yeah, and $3 copper. I think copper's what, $2.80 something cents now?
Yeah, 282.
282. $3 copper would be like a major headline in our world, not in the world, but our world, for sure. Matt, I don't know how many actually publicly traded companies there are in Yukon that are in the metals business. I'm going to guess like 40. I have no idea. 40. Do you have a connection to the Yukon? I mean,
yeah, I'd say for.
I mean, you didn't go to.
I think I know all the companies and all.
Right, you didn't go to school there, though. I mean, what sparked your interest in Yukon? I mean, because you live here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I grew up in the Kootenays, though, but my dad was a geologist. He worked up in the Yukon.
Oh yes, that's right. You told me the story.
When I was a kid.
Yeah, it's a good story. Right. Okay. And I mean, how do you? Be honest with us. How do you rate it compared to other places that you don't want to be working in Fiji, right?
Fiji would be nice. But there's so many things to love about working in the Yukon, from the people to even the proximity from Vancouver. If you're based here, it's only a couple-hour flight up to Whitehorse. And then just the potential as well, right? So it goes to show, look at what we did at Claza, going into a kind of a old forgotten gold belt, and we found over 1 million ounces, only 8 kilometers away from an old mine. So
right.
And there's plenty more out there to find. So it's all a matter of putting good science and a little bit of luck and
the
dollars
road
towards
and the roadways. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on this, and I have to thank, of course, the Yukon Mining Association and Ann Lewis for asking me to come here and do this kind of stuff. We're about out of time, correct? Yes. Okay. But real quick, I just want to say that stuff that they were talking about at the YMA this morning and the $500,000, that's big. There aren't that many. There are quite 2 or 3 organizations like that in Quebec, but there are not very many jurisdictions in the world that have a group like the Yukon Mining Association. Okay, Ann's got my M80 from my bag, and she's ready to throw it at my head. So I want to thank you all, Tim Johnson, Scott Sheldon, and Matt Turner, and that's Rockhaven Resources, Go Metals, and Granite Creek. Thank you, gentlemen.